afternoon. Welcome to our this month's Self-Build Hour. As you know, we are hosting these on a monthly basis as a means of diving deep into a specific subject around self-building. So I'm Jenny Chandela. I'm going to be your host today. I am one of the architects at Allen Corfield Architects. We have offices here in Swindon. I'm at the NSBRC right now at our office here, and then we also have offices in Scotland. So we are joined today by Simon Dane, who is going to be speaking to us specifically about project management and project management as it relates to self-build. You have the opportunity during his presentation to ask any questions within the Q&A section. If the Q&A function is disabled on your version of Teams, please do feel free to put those in the chat. We'll be using the chat throughout this presentation as a means for also sharing with you additional links that you may find helpful as they relate to self-build and self-build project management. This session is being recorded, so for those people who are not with us today, they will have the opportunity to watch this on demand, as well as those who are joining us today live. If there's any information that you want to go back and revisit, you'll also be able to view this video on demand. So thank you so much for joining us and for your attention today. I am going to now welcome Simon Dane to the Self-Build Hour. As I said, he's going to be speaking to us specifically about project management. He's got over 30 years of experience in project management, and it has worked specifically in self-build for a number of years now. After doing his own self-build project, he realized that there's a real gap in the market relative to not only project management on the whole, but project management specific to self-build, which is quite different than a normal development, commercial development project. So without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Simon. You can turn on your mic and camera and share screen with us.
Thank you, Jenny. It's working.
Yes, that's lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for your kind words. And welcome, everyone. Yes, I've been invited by AC Architects this afternoon to talk about project management for self-builds and the various options that are open to you as self-builders in regards to project management. The particular topics that I've been asked to talk about is whether you need a project manager for your project. What are the delivery options as a self-builder in terms of project management? And what can be done to help reduce the overall cost of your project? So obviously starting with the first section, do I need a project manager for my project? Well, someone has to take responsibility for delivering the project from the start through to completion. And there are many options for that. Obviously, one of the joys of building your own house is to be heavily involved in the managing of that project. But it takes a lot of time. If you've not done it before, it can be quite a daunting task. And suddenly, you know, what becomes a dream can become a bit of a nightmare if you're not prepared and understanding the task ahead of you, I guess. So this statement here, I think is quite key. Managing your own building project can be a daunting task, especially if you've never done it before. It takes a lot of time, it can be stressful, and mistakes can be costly. Now, each project is unique, but the construction principles are similar. So experience and knowledge will help you ensure your build is managed efficiently and competitively, mistakes are prevented, and above all, your project is finished to the highest standards, on time and within budget. So they are quite important points that need to be considered when you embark on your own self-build. And whether you choose to do it yourself or employ a project manager will be very much up to a number of different factors, costs, your time and your knowledge, I guess. Now, what I normally recommend once works on site start, the first operation is the groundworks contract. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on here. I'm talking about whether you need a project manager is what we're still sort of talking about. Now, while the groundworks are going on, following that will be your SIPs or your ICF or your timber frame or traditional build. And often those companies will say that they can manage the whole process for you. Once you've done the groundworks, they will come in and they will manage the whole process for you, and they will deliver the shell of your property. But in fact, when you start to read the small print of their contract, there are a lot of other tasks that need to be carried out in order for them to do their works. Things like scaffold, access, site setup, site accommodation. All of these things need to be coordinated, and it's a bit unfair when these companies say that they will manage the whole process, because actually someone is still needed to fill in those gaps. And that is just one small section. That is just the frame, and then of course when you go into the fit out, that's when things. That's when lots of questions are raised, and someone has to be on hand, on site, to answer those questions. And if those questions aren't answered, and you let the contractor make those decisions, you're going to end up with a house that isn't quite as you anticipated, or there's going to be a delay while they wait for your instruction, and delays cost money. So what I'm trying to say is someone needs to be, and whether that's you or a professional project manager, on site on a regular basis to oversee the construction, answer any questions, and keep the job moving forward. So hopefully that answers the question. Do you need a project manager? Yes, you don't need to hire a project manager, but someone, either you or someone else, needs to be available to manage that project for you during the course of construction. These sites don't run themselves. There are a lot of tradesmen involved. There are a lot of technical issues to overcome, legal responsibilities, health and safety. So yeah, unfortunately, a project does not run itself, and someone does need to take on the role of managing the whole process for you or with you from start to finish. So what are the delivery options as a self-builder? In other words, what are the options open to you to manage your project? Now, of course, you can self-manage your project. You can employ a professional project manager or a combination of both. Now, the jobs, in my experience, the jobs that have run best have been the latter option, where the client is heavily involved, but they also employ a professional to help guide them, and hold their hand, I guess, but through the whole process. Now, at the end of this presentation, I've got some case studies, and they were all managed very differently. So I can explain to you how each job ended up due to different management styles. Now, to self-manage your build, ideally you need to have some project management skills, and not just construction. I mean, project management is a very broad term. but you need to understand, cost, time, quality. Ideally, you need some construction experience, and you need to dedicate quite a lot of time to oversee your project. Now, some people have that time, but they don't have that experience. And that's where a professional project manager can help fill in the gaps. Now, the other option, obviously, is to employ a professional project manager and leave them to run your job. Now, that I don't think is ideal either, because it needs your input. There'll be lots of decisions that need your guidance. We don't know exactly what it is you had in your mind when you designed the property at the outset. So there needs to be a lot of communication between the project manager and the client. But I accept some clients don't have the time to get to site and make those decisions. So that's why they employ a professional project manager. Now, I have run jobs where I have just been left to run the job, and in some ways it's quite an honour, not an honour, but it's quite nice that they trust you to run the job for them. But it's also a little bit daunting at times when you're not sure if you're actually making the right decision on their behalf. So whilst it's nice to be given, not the keys, but given the site to run, I much prefer it when there is a combination of both, the latter option. And those jobs, in my experience, are the ones that have run the smoothest and the client's been the happiest at the end. So they are, in essence, the different delivery options as a self-builder. Apart from, sorry, I've missed one. Now, the other option is some contractors, well, all contractors offer project management, but that's their own project management. That is, they have a manager that manages their project, and they call him a project manager. They used to call him a contracts manager. And often, they will say, we can project manage this job for you. But they only have their interests at heart. They don't really have your interests at heart. Whereas a dedicated project manager employed by you obviously has your interests at heart. So whilst you might think you're saving money by letting the contractor project manage the job, invariably you will run into some difficulties, mainly financial. And I'll come on to that towards the end of this presentation, because one of the projects I ran after we got the shell and core up and we got the property watertight, he decided to let the contractor project manage the job, and it turned quite nasty, unfortunately. So yes, sorry, there are four options. Self-manage your build, employ a professional project manager, a combination of both, or allow your contractor to project manage it. So hopefully that's answered that question. And if you have any questions on that, obviously let Jenny know and we can answer those at the end. Now, what can you do to help reduce the overall cost of your project? And there are many things you can do. Excuse me. Now, the first thing I always advise my clients is to have a cost plan drawn up, which is basically a build budget. And I think if you speak to any professional in the self-build industry, we all say the same thing. They don't cost a lot of money, but it gives you an understanding of the costs of your project from the outset. And And if you don't have that, you can run into all sorts of difficulties. And you see those projects on grand designs where they, the money runs out, the budget runs out, they go over budget. That's because they haven't set a budget in stone at the outset. I'll come back onto a cost plan in a minute. I've got a couple of slides of a typical cost plan, but I can't stress enough the importance of drawing up a cost plan and agreeing it. And the advantage of that as well is that you'll get your cost plan, and it's a bit like a shopping list of all the different stages of construction and what they're likely to cost. And we offer sort of a high spec costing, and then a medium spec costing. And at that stage, you can sort of chop and change your budget or your cost plan to suit your budget. And what I mean by that is you might have allowed £20,000 for your bathrooms, but the budget is coming in more than you thought, so you might have to reduce the budget for your bathrooms. It's that sort of thing to try and get within a budget that you're comfortable with before you start works. I mean, there'd be nothing worse than running out of money halfway through a project and having to stop. And then, of course, there's a whole load of additional costs in getting the job restarted. So, yeah, I can't stress enough the importance of a cost plan. Now, the other mistake I see people make is that they don't get the design right at design stage. And halfway through the build, they sort of realize that things aren't quite as they envisaged, and they want to then make some changes, and some of them can be substantial, and suddenly the budget goes out the window because you haven't allowed in the budget for such changes, and the costs start running away with themselves. So what I'm trying to say is make sure you're happy with your design in every way before you start works. Now, I know AC Architects offer this VR headset experience, which kind of blew me away when I saw it. And that sort of thing is what you need to invest your time in doing before you start works, to make sure that you're absolutely happy with everything before you start work. Now, having said all that, changes do happen. I don't know of any job where, there hasn't been changes on the way. But when there are some changes, it's much better to get the cost of those works agreed before you instruct the works to be done. Otherwise, there's a danger that the contractor will come back with far more cost than you were expecting. And also, it kind of helps them get on with the change if they are instructed sooner rather than later. But yeah, try and avoid too many changes. And if there are changes, try and agree the price ahead of time before instructing the works. Now, another area, excuse me, I've got a croaky voice today. Try and avoid too many provisional sums. I'm not sure if you know what provisional sums are, but when you're tendering the works to your contractors, some things won't be clear. You might not have agreed. You might not know what tile you want in the bathrooms, for instance. So it's quite normal to agree a provisional sum of a rate for that tile until you've had a chance to choose that tile. And obviously you try and choose a tile within the rate of that provisional sum, if that makes sense. But what I'm trying to say is try, when you're tendering the works, not to have too many provisional sums. So try and agree as much of the project as you can. You won't be able to agree everything, but the less provisional sums there are, the less risk there is of going over your budget. Now, decisions, yes, try and avoid delays in making decisions. Now, often there'll be queries that come up on site, and if there's no one on site to answer those queries, the job can come to a standstill. And then if a job is at standstill, it is still costing you money. The contractor has a right to claim for standing time because they have ongoing costs. So if they ask for a decision, try and make that decision as promptly as you can, and try not to create any delays in the project. Again, not always easy if you're not on site, but again, that is where a professional project manager would come in to help you make those decisions, or make those decisions on your behalf. And finally, well, I said employ a professional project manager, but also employ a professional quantity surveyor. So I believe that a project manager and a quantity surveyor are kind of cost neutral. As in, yes, we have to be paid a fee for what we do, but I can pretty much guarantee on every job I've done, I have saved my fee in the savings I've made for the client during the course of construction. And it's the same with a quantity surveyor. They are very good at providing a very detailed breakdown of the works in the form of a bill of quantities. And a bill of quantities is basically every nut and bolt of the project is listed. How many doors, how much architrave, what area of painting is needed, and that document goes out to tender with the main contractors. And then if you've gone out to 4 contractors and you've got this one document, they're all pricing the same thing. Again, I've seen self-builders get their project quoted in the same way they might have got their, I don't know, flooring or their carpets quoted at their house or an extension, where they just send the drawings out to various people and they come back with quotes. Now, with a new build, it's far more complicated, far more complex, far bigger. You cannot just send out the drawings to interested contractors and expect to get not similar prices, but expect them to have priced the same thing. They will all make different assumptions. And what might look like the cheapest price, you might find if you look into the detail, they haven't allowed as much as the other contractor. So employing a quantity surveyor to produce a bill of quantities, to tender the jobs in a professional manner, in the right manner, ultimately will save you money. And also a quantity surveyor, if there are any variations, they're very good at negotiating those on your behalf. And they know the current rates for everything. So, a contractor is less likely to be able to charge more when you have a quantity surveyor or a professional project manager looking at their costs. So they are some of the things that can be done to help reduce the overall cost. Oh yes, I was going to go on to cost plan, wasn't I? So yes, here is a typical cost plan. Now this is the summary page. I don't know how many pages it was, but basically, as you can see, it sort of lists the main items. It starts demolition, substructures, external works, roofs, and at the bottom, you've got a total estimated cost, £1.76 million for everything to build this house in Pamber Green, which I'll show you towards the end. Then there was a slightly lesser spec where the price came in at 1590. The client was actually horrified. In fact, invariably, whenever I get a cost plan done, it's always more than the client believed it would be, always more than they were told. And I think in this case, the client was told by the timber frame company, of all people, that it would only cost 1.2 million to build his house with everything. Now, how they know that, they are only interested in their timber frame. So I think what I'm trying to say is that a lot of these timber frame companies, SIPS companies, ICF companies, they're only interested in selling their product, and they will often underestimate the overall cost in the hopes of attracting a client and getting them to sign up for their product. So again, this is why a cost plan is so important, and it's far more realistic than, you know, a timber frame company is going to tell you in order to sell their product. It's done independently by a professional quantity surveyor, and these things cost. They don't cost a lot in the overall scale. I think, you know, this one cost £1,800. And, you know, it gave us all something to work towards. And of course, once the client saw this, and he was obviously shocked, and we went through it and we took out some of the nicer things that he had, you know, the wine cellar, an underground wine cellar, things like that got taken out, and we were able to get the budget not down to 1.2 million, but I think down to 1.4 million, which was manageable for him. Page. So I haven't sort of shown you the whole cost plan. That was the summary page. Excuse me. So this is kind of the groundworks section of it. So as you can see, it's very detailed in terms of, you know, earthwork support, disposal of excavated material, reinforced concrete, you know, reinforcement. It was a concrete slab. It was a raft foundation there, piled with a raft with a raft slab over the top. So yes, very, very detailed breakdown of what it's likely to cost. And then the idea is, of course, to then go out to contractors and try and get in with under this budget. So you start with this budget, and then you want to come in under budget, and it gives you something to reference when you start getting quotes back. So I hope that that makes sense. So now I'm going to show you some of the previous projects that I've done. Now, this was the first project I did with AC Architects many years ago now, I think, in Wadhouse. It was a beautiful house. I think it was one of the biggest SIPS properties at the time. And this one, the client was very busy, but he dedicated one day a week. So he would come to site on a Wednesday, him and his wife, and spend the day with me. And then the rest of the week, I would be there 2.5 days a week. You know, I would manage the project on their behalf. And obviously we would chat by email. I couldn't get hold of him on the phone during the day, and it was absolutely critical. He ran quite a big business. But that job went really well, and it's a beautiful house. Yeah, really proud of that one. So what I'm trying to say is that went well because there was shared responsibility for the project management between you know, myself and the client. Now this one in Gerrard's Cross. So this was huge. This was on 4 floors. It had a big basement with a swimming pool, and you know, obviously went up into the roof space. It had a lift. They were all, you know, it was a really big, I think it was 10 or 12,000 square foot property. And I was involved at the outset. I oversaw the groundworks, the shell and core, pretty much got the property watertight. And the client ran his own business, and he sold his business pretty much as we started works. But he obviously had to stay on during the transition for a year or so. And then once he was relieved of his responsibilities, he was like, I've got plenty of time now, Simon. So then he took over the project management, and that worked. You know, that worked quite well. I was involved at the outset, and this is one where I was left on my own. I had very little involvement with the client, but then he took over the project halfway through because he had the time. And he had done some previous construction works himself. So yeah, he did well. Nice job. Now this is Pamber Green. This is the one that the cost plan was for. And this was a timber frame property. And I was involved with the client during the groundworks and the timber frame, and again we got it watertight, and then we employed a main contractor to do the fit out. And the client said, well, now we've got a main contractor doing the fit out, why do I need you, Simon? And I said, no, fair enough, if you want to, you know, let them project manage it, it's absolutely fine. And he, don't forget, this job was over budget. And this was actually quite a young couple. I mean, he was doing very well, but money was an issue, not an issue, but you know, obviously he was trying to save costs where he could, and so you know, he sort of politely asked me to step aside once we got a main contractor involved, and the main contractor project managed it. Now I know this main contractor because I obviously recommended them, and yeah, I heard there were all sorts of issues financially where he didn't understand the variations. So unfortunately, the job turned a bit sour because he didn't have someone on his side, I guess, and it became between him and the contractor. I say him, obviously it's him and his wife, but he was the main kind of point of contact. Yeah, so and I can't help it. They were a young couple. In fact, they got married during the course of that construction, and she's since had a baby. But what I'm trying to say is, it's not nice when a job goes wrong and it's your house. And there would have, because of what happened between him and the contractor, it would have left a bitter taste in his mouth as they've moved into this new house, and it's a beautiful house. So yeah, unfortunately, using the contractor to project manage the property is not the way forward, in my mind. Now, last slide. Binfield Heath. This, like the first job, this was a lovely project. Now here, the client lived next door to this property. And I say her husband was always abroad working, so she was heavily involved in overseeing this project, and she would be on site pretty much every morning to answer questions. And I would go there once or twice a week, and I'd be there for meetings and one thing and another. And basically I was there to kind of hold her hand and guide her and reassure her and stick up for her, and you know, have her interests at heart. And that job went really, really well, and we worked very well together. So yeah, another job where I'm trying to say that where client and project manager decide to project manage the job together, they're the jobs that run the best. And you know, that is a case in point. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed, hope you've understood what I've said. And if you've got any questions, please let me know.
Thank you very much, Simon. I am now going to open up to questions. So if you can just stop sharing your screen, Simon, then the two of us can have a bit of a chat. I thought that was really, really, really interesting and useful, Simon, the way you talked about the. Have you got the stuff?
Have I stopped sharing?
Yeah. Not
Are you
yet.
okay? Oh.
You haven't quite stopped.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
There we go. Okay, lovely. Thank you. No worries. The joys of a live presentation. But I thought it was really interesting how you went through some of those case studies. So we got to hear some information about sort of the ideals of how it should work, the options of how it can work, and how things can work really well, and where problems can arise. You can, of course, get through those problems. And every project is going to have sort of hiccups along the way, if you will. So it was really interesting to hear, just some of your experience in the different ways people have delivered their projects. So one of the questions that came in was, do you find that there are different market rates based on the area of the UK where you're building?
Sorry, Jenny, I don't understand that question. Do I?
So market rates related to sort of the cost of construction.
Absolutely, yeah. Market rates across the UK vary considerably. I don't know where the cheapest, but yes, obviously London would be the most expensive. And I'm only involved. I mean, I'm in Berkshire, and I manage jobs around this area. So I can't really, I don't know what the rates are elsewhere in the UK, but I know that they do vary. And I also know that when a quantity surveyor is doing a budget or whatever, part of the principles of quantity surveying is what area the works are in, and that the rates vary depending on the area. So yes, in answer to that question, yes, the costs of build will vary depending on the area.
Okay. We've got a few questions about costing, and I appreciate you're not a quantity surveyor, so
that's okay.
I'm going to answer these, but please do feel free to answer as you can. So one of the questions is, at what stage and what information would be required to put together an accurate cost plan for your build? Do you start that early on? Do you do it sort of at planning stage, or is it further along?
Yeah, no, that is a very good question. And a cost plan can be done off planning drawings, but it's not ideal. So the more detailed drawings you have, the more detailed the cost plan will be. So if you've got construction drawings, and even better, if you've got the engineer's drawings, i.e. the foundations and drainage and that kind of thing, the more accurate the cost plan will be. But of course, the problem with that is you have the planning drawings quite early on when you go to planning. You invariably don't get the construction drawings done until you've got planning, and then you want to get started. So as soon as you get planning, you want to get started. And if you haven't any understanding of the budget until that point, so I sort of think, actually, although it's not going to be very accurate, to give you an idea, it's probably better to get the cost plan done at the early stage with planning drawings, and then maybe have it updated once you have the working drawings. And then at least you've sort of got 3 months while it's going to planning to sort of consider the budget and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, when we're obviously we don't cost projects the way a quantity surveyor would either, but we do typically just start on a gross cost per square meter as a sort of check to make sure we're staying in budget. But there's a lot in there that can change throughout the course of the project. So then we recommend, okay, we're a little bit further along. Do you want to go out and start talking to your building kit supply or your window and door manufacturers, and get some of the costing of the big items, at least once again at a high level. It's not going to be the final cost.
Yes.
But to the extent that you can start to zoom in on what that's going to be and make sure you're still within your budget and your contingency. And then at that point, your contingency dependency can start to shrink once you get that cost plan in place.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
And the beauty of a cost plan is, it gives you the option to chop and change and rethink, do I want to spend 50 grand on a kitchen? Can I have a kitchen for £30,000 that is similar? Those sort of things. It raises those questions.
And do you typically manage the tendering process?
Yeah. So we have quantity surveyors that work for us, so we manage that. But as you say, I'm not a quantity surveyor, and some people think employing a project manager, we do all of it, but I am kind of more site-based, more practical-based. Quantity surveyor is kind of more back office, detailed numbers, figures, costings, but the two of us work very well together, and unfortunately, you need both of us for the job to run well.
And what about project administration or contract administration? Is that something
contract administration is a bit of an oddball because but people are often sort of told that they need a contract administrator. No, you don't. I mean, a client is quite capable of being the contract administrator. I see no point employing a contract administrator, but I always recommend we have a quantity surveyor. We get him to do the initial build budget. He's then kind of responsible for making sure that he gets prices within his budget. Otherwise, he's going to look a bit silly. And then he tenders the work. He appoints the contractor. And then every month there's a valuation. And that's normally where the contract administrator comes in. So every month there's a valuation. Contract administrator comes on site, makes sure the work's done. Not necessary. I'm on site, or a project manager on site, quite capable of signing off on works, and so is a quantity surveyor. So I always think, a contract administrator can be the quantity surveyor. I'm sort of rambling. Sorry, Jenny.
Yeah, no, that's helpful because I think a lot of times these words and terms and titles are thrown around interchangeably, and as a self-builder, the self-builders often don't know what's the difference, who's going to be doing what. Do I need all of them? Are they the same thing? So it gets to be a bit of a thing that needs to be
daunting.
Unpacked.
Yeah. And often when I start a job with a client, I will get so sort of inundated with text messages at 11 o'clock at night. What does this mean? What does that mean? Because they don't understand it. And I quite like it because it's quite refreshing. It's nice to be able to educate people. But they're not going to know, Jenny. Self-builders, never done this before. They're not going to know what these terms are, what the processes are, what's required. And again, it's nice for them to have someone that they can ask those questions to, because who else do they go to?
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. If there's something that you don't know, ask the professionals you're working with, because it's probably something that we deal with on a regular basis. And if we don't know the exact answer, we know someone who does.
Yes,
so
exactly.
Ask questions if you don't know. Don't just think that it'll be revealed at some point to you, or you'll figure it out. Ask the question, you'll be in a better position.
So going back to that job that turned a bit sour, where the contractor became the project manager, and the client was then asking him a million questions that he used to ask me, and the contractor was saying to me, Simon, I don't get paid to do this, and I'm like, I said, I know, but that's unfortunately the situation we're now in, so yeah.
Absolutely. So when would a project manager or when would your ideal time to get involved in a project be?
As soon as possible. Normally sort of once you've got planning, would be the ideal stage, but then we can be engaged at any point. And some jobs, your client starts off project managing it, then wants some help, and we can come in at any stage, but the ideal stage is early on, and to get involved and get to know the client, get to understand what they're thinking about, what's what's in their head as regards this property, what's important to them, and those kind of things. So yeah, the sooner the better.
Do you find there are any projects that actually you're better suited not to work on, and a different project manager would be better to work on, or do you think actually with project management it's less about personality and fit? There's enough sort of consistency within self-build project management that scale or aspiration is
yeah. I mean, I guess there becomes a stage when it's not sort of financially viable to employ a project manager for a small job.
Mm-hmm.
We come into our own when it becomes a sort of detached type self-build.
Mm-hmm.
If we were asked to project manage a garage extension or something like that, it's not very cost effective to have us.
Okay.
But I think the more important thing from my point of view is how you get on with that client. I think the relationship between the client and their project manager is really important. You're going to be working with these people for the next 18 months. You're building their house. It's a really personal appointment. So that, to me, is more important. When choosing a project manager from the client's point of view, make sure you're very comfortable with them, that you feel you can text them at 11 o'clock at night and they're not going to be upset. That's more important.
Okay, great, thank you. So we've got a question. I'm just reading the question. So if you decide to have a project manager, but you as the self-builder want to provide input as well, what's the best way of working together?
That is the best way. That absolutely is the best way, because you will be working together. We'll be talking a lot. We'll be, either on the phone, emailing, meeting on site, and you mustn't be afraid to be able to talk to your project manager about anything to do with the project, obviously. Whereas if you don't have a project manager, and to try and have that relationship with a contractor, again, there's a wall. Client and contractor, they're on two very different sides of the table. The project manager sits right in the middle of that. So it's very daunting for some clients to approach contractors. Some clients don't like talking directly to contractors because often they're big burly men, but yeah, how the relationship works, you become almost like friends. That's the wrong term, but you're just working very well together.
A lot of trust.
Which again goes back to what I just said earlier, that it's about whether you feel you can get on with that person. That is more important than anything else, I think.
And then for that type of any type of project manager relationship, the scope sounds like there can be a lot of variation on what the scope is that the project manager is doing versus what the self-builder is doing. So how would you cost a proposal for a project for a self-build client? Is it an hourly basis, or do you put together fixed fee proposals?
Yeah, so again, it's a good question, Jenny. And from my understanding, other companies, there's lots of ways of charging for project management, and some, I believe, like to charge a percentage of the build cost to project manage. Now, in my mind, that's sort of counterintuitive, as in the project manager is almost encouraged to spend more of your money to increase their fees. I'm sure they wouldn't, but it doesn't sit right with me.
Mm-hmm.
I like to charge so before works on site start, there are lots of little things that need to be done, appointing building control, warranty provider, getting the tenders out, doing all these sort of things, and for that, we charge an hourly rate, and it's usually 2-3 hours a week while you're getting the site set up and getting, before works on site start. And then once your contractor starts or the groundworks starts, then we're needed a bit more. So from that point on, it's usually, but it can vary job to job, 1 day a week. So that would be sort of one site visit a week, and then sort of half a day for all the other stuff that needs to go on with emails and phone calls. And that's usually, all of my appointments have been on that basis. But a number of clients have asked me to do a fixed fee. And I can't, because even though I'm the project manager and I'm meant to know the end date, invariably jobs slip because there are changes. So that's through no fault of my own. And so I can't really give a fixed fee, because how could I then carry on working 1 day a week beyond what I thought the job was going to take, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
So, but I like to be very fair and flexible. And the other thing is that sometimes there might be times during the project where I'm needed more, and other times when I'm needed less. So I'm quite happy to be flexible with my hours and my rates. But I believe actually I'm quite reasonable, and I save, and I can save that money. I can save them my fees during the course of construction. I mean, my business was groundwork. I had a groundworks company for 10 years, quite a big company in this area. And of course, the groundworks is the first appointment. And of course, I'm all over that, aren't I? I know it like the back of my hand, and I can save the client significant sums of money on the groundworks. And before I've even started, I think, right, well, I've paid myself now, and they know it. So employ me for the groundwork stage, and then I'm cost free.
Excellent. Well, and I think what you're saying it completely makes sense. They're paying actually for professional time, but that professional time is somewhat of an unknown. And that's all the more reason to have someone work with someone you can trust and you have a good working relationship with.
Yes. Yes.
Just it's going to make everything easier, even those costing conversations that you're going to have that can be awkward. We all hate talking about how much things are going to cost.
There are many,
on both sides.
Yeah.
But it's got to be done. So if you can have that relationship and really build up that trust, it's going to work best for everyone. So, well, thank you very much, Simon. This has been extremely informative. I think everyone on this call probably has a much better idea of the role of the project manager, and hopefully feels a bit empowered that they can potentially take on some of the works themselves. And actually, a project manager would encourage that and like that of their clients. Yeah.
Well, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to email me. My contact details, I'm sure, will be distributed. Yes. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to ask me. And thank you, Jenny. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thank you. Well, I will now just close by going through sort of the top takeaways that I had noted, and then we'll close out the session. So the things that I jotted down were that every project does require a project manager. So bearing in mind that someone's going to be doing that day-to-day work, or some combination of people will be doing work. Make sure that you work from a fixed design, and this is going to help you avoid some of those costly changes that potentially could take place during construction. Work to a realistic cost plan and go back and reference that cost plan throughout design and construction stages. Make decisions in a timely manner. And finally, communication, and really clear communication, is essential to a smooth running project. So if you enjoyed the information on today's session, know that we do host these monthly. We do also have some in-person opportunities. So Home Building and Renovating Show is taking place the 27th through the 29th of September at Excel in London. So that's a large show that you can come and get a lot of information from different exhibitors throughout the self-build process, talk to professionals as well as the construction and trade end of the self-build. Additionally, the National Self-Build and Renovation Center in Swindon, where I am right now, is hosting their autumn show the 11th and 12th of October. So those are two opportunities coming up where you can come to a trade show and have a look around and talk to people in person. Finally, next month, we'll be joined by Sophie Whitaker. She is going to be talking to us about what to consider when you are designing your kitchen for your self-build, to make sure that you've got the space right and that you've accommodated what you need for that dream kitchen, and to really make life in your house what you hope it to be. So please do join us next month for the October Self-Build Hour.